Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome Dr. Derald Wentzien, as well as students Skylar Tenan and Carl Jennings from Delaware State University, to discuss their experience with the FICO Educational Challenge. FICO is a proud partner with Delaware State for the second time now, and we congratulate Delaware State University for completing the challenge. And before we dive into the experiences in this round of the Analytic Challenge, I first want to reiterate, what is that FICO Analytic Challenge? The FICO Analytic Challenge presents students with real-world challenges, prepare them for jobs in data science, and in specifically the financial services industry. And so we construct problems that are real-world problems that the teams get to get their hands around and try to solve with AI, data science, analytics, and how to do that responsibly and ethically. This is our second year, as I mentioned, and this second year we focused on transaction analytics and fraud detection, one of the more challenging applications, but also one of the oldest applications of AI and machine learning. And so the students were taught the design of machine learning algorithms to predict fraud in financial transactions. And as part of this challenge, students got an opportunity to be mentored by myself, my team of data scientists, and I've invited two students to discuss their experiences. Before we get to the students, though, Dr. Wentzien, I'd like to start with you with a few questions. First, can you tell our audience a little bit about your career and what you currently teach at Delaware State University?
Sure, I'd be glad to. My name is Derald Wentzien, and I'm a visiting professor of business analytics at Delaware State University. When I was an undergraduate, I studied mechanical engineering. I thought for sure that I would be an engineer till I retired. And the word that always sticks out with me is opportunity. When I was working as an engineer, they said, well, you can go to graduate school. I went to graduate school, studied mathematics, really loved it. My professors encouraged me to go on for my PhD, which brought me to Delaware in 1990 at the University of Delaware, studied operations research, really enjoyed the modeling aspect. I started working for a credit card company, loved the modeling. But as I was pursuing my doctorate, I remember my advisor called me into the office one day. I thought I was in trouble, but said, guess what? You're teaching my class on Thursday. And I was like, well, no one taught me how to teach. I taught the class, really enjoyed it. So I taught at a private college in Delaware for 20 years, which eventually closed after the pandemic, which brought me to Delaware State. Love teaching business analytics, love seeing the students learn. And then when you reached out and talked about the opportunities, I said, what a great opportunity for not just Delaware State, but for the students to show them real world applications, learning from data scientists that are working today.
That's wonderful. And, one of the things that I'm really impressed with over the last 2 years that we've been able to collaborate together is just that focus you have on enabling those students with real world experiences, trying to give them glances and opportunities to see what what a job and industry looks like, right? And how do you apply the skills that we learn in school? And I think that's comes straight across. And one of the things I was just curious about, like, this is year two, and I want to thank you again for participating in year two. So what was it about year two that you decided to kind of re-up again and participate in the challenge for a second year, now with a different problem?
I say it took a microsecond when you reached out and said, it was like, yes, the students, it is a challenge, but it's a challenge where they're actually learning. The students, reach the obstacles. And I tell the students, it's how you navigate through the obstacles, reaching out, asking for clarification, leveraging the mentors that you did provide to them was a great experience for them. Because I tell them, for me, it was always a collaborative effort. If I was working on a model, I may be stuck on something, but somebody else in the department may already know how to do something or very similar. We used to meet weekly where we would discuss our projects and just get insights from everybody. So just the opportunity to work with your data scientist and the students. Like I said, they view it as a challenge. It is a challenge to them, but they tell me I have students now that are ready to come back for a third time. So
That's awesome. And we can't wait to partner again for year three. And you know what? This was a tough one, right? Like last year, it was all about credit risk and the dirtiness of data and ethical concerns, particularly, with respect to race and gender, ethnicity, and other concepts. And that was a really powerful year one. This year, right, also powerful, but in a different way. Like the data challenges, like trying to summarize a transaction history and make a decision about the next transaction is a very advanced concept. And so I was just curious, like when the students first got that dumped on their laps, I mean, what was the first couple of weeks like? Was it, hey, no prob, or was it a little bit of panic and pandemonium?
well, I would say that when you came and you visited Delaware State and you provided a talk on AI, because of that talk, I did have students approach me and say, "Hey, that sounds like something very interesting. I'd like to participate." So that was a great recruiting tool. It was a challenge. And part of the things that try to emphasize in class is that when you're asked to do something, I call it the ask. What is it that the client wants you to do? What are the decisions they're trying to make? Because you may have a sense of what model you want to create, but you do want to make sure that you're providing them with information that they need to make the business decisions that they're going to make. So I encourage them, make sure that you understand what it is they exactly want you to do. Make sure that you understand all of the tools and software. And I would say the initial 1 or 2 weeks was making sure that they had access to all the software they needed, that they started to look at the data. And I said, if you have any questions, go to the data dictionary. And if you still have questions, go to the mentors and say, could you please explain what exactly is a PAN? I'm not quite sure. It's everyday language for you and your team.
Yeah.
But make sure that you understand everything so that you have a good sense of where it is you're trying to go. So I would say it was a lot of learning. It was a lot of building with the software, making sure that the software and tools were actually going to work when they started to analyze the data.
Yeah, and then a lot of these students had limited experience with Python and other tools, and so they really got enriched quick. And I'm really happy and proud of all the work that the students did, because there's a lot for them to learn. And one of the things we haven't talked about yet, but I think is one of the more interesting parts of these challenges, is that it's a competition in addition to a challenge. So it's not just individual, right? That the students break into teams, they name their teams, and then they compete, right, for first and second and third and so forth, right? And I always find it interesting how our partners in the universities decide or help students form teams. So, I mean, what's your philosophy with respect to forming teams that work well together? Because that's super important, as you very well know, right, Dr. Wentzien. Working with teams and knowing how to complement your strengths and weaknesses with those that have other strengths and weaknesses, super important. So just can you give a little bit of view, like how did you help form the teams, and if you did, what were you looking for to help them with creating those teams that would be most successful?
I did help in structuring the teams. I had students from a variety of different concentrations in the College of Business. We had business analytics, we had MIS, we had accounting students that wanted to participate, general management. So I already knew I had a variety of concentrations, but they were actually coming from 3 different classes that I taught. So I knew that it was important, especially given what happened, in the first go around, understanding the dynamics and working with the mentors. I organized them based on which students were in which classes that I was teaching. That gave them a variety of concentrations to bounce ideas off each other, but it also gave me a chance over and above the weekly lectures. Uh, the mentors offered office hours every week. In addition to that, it gave me a chance to communicate, talk to each team as I entered a particular classroom. So as you mentioned, and I think it's very important, the structure of the team and being able to bounce ideas off each other and being able to communicate quickly with each other. They quickly established their own team meetings, but I think that was a dynamic very important. But that's the way I did it. I wanted to make sure that I could communicate to the teams over and above what your mentors did with the weekly lectures and the office hours, which were very good, very helpful.
So before I bring the students back, just one more question for you. And you've been a tremendous partner through the program. And one of the things that I was just curious about, did you have advice for professors that are either entering the program for the first time, you're a veteran here, or thinking about entering this program? What would you say to someone in your shoes, right, in terms of looking at a program like this and deciding whether or not to have their university participate?
Well, something that's very important to me, as I know it's probably very important to many faculty members at Delaware State and many faculty members across the country, that we all focus on the admission rates. We all focus on the retention rates. We all focus on graduation rates. And something that I communicate and others respond very favorably is, me personally, others in my department, I don't want to speak like I'm the only one doing this. Not only do we want the students to graduate, but we want the students to graduate with the skills and the knowledge that potential employers like FICO and other companies need and want. So yes, it's important for the students to graduate, but it's also important to have those skills that the employers are looking for. This competition, the challenge that you set up, I think fits perfectly with that. They're learning from real, when data scientists working today, and they're teaching them the skills and software that's currently being used. This is what we'd like you to do if you were to consider, a career with FICO or any other company. So if you want your students to be job ready, this analytical challenge is a great way to make, to help in that process.
Yeah. Well, and I couldn't have said it better. And I'm glad to hear that we're focused on that alignment. And in fact, as you know, right, I announced, intern positions specifically for students that participate in the challenge, right? Because we're training our students with skills that are useful for FICO. And so they come in doing these intern positions this summer, and we're asking for students to apply with the right skills, and they can even further that sort of exploration of what it means to do data science within industry. So appreciate that. Let's bring the students in. Let's hear their perspectives. All right. So I want to welcome both you, Skylar and Carl. First of all, congratulations on completing the analytic challenge. And also, thank you very much for giving your perspectives on what it's been like to go through that program. I think it's really interesting to hear your voices, and as other students are trying to understand, what you've learned and also what they could look forward to as they participate. So before we get into, let's say, an individual question for each of you, I mentioned before that you break into teams, and you both were on different teams competing against each other. So could you just start off us by telling everyone what your team name was and a little bit of a philosophy around the team? We can start with you, Carl.
Sure. So the name of our team we went with was the AI Trendsetters. We chose this name because of the theme for this challenge, which was to use artificial intelligence technology to detect and combat fraud. And ideally, we will pave a new wave with our ideas that we come up with throughout the challenge. So that's how we came up with that name. But to answer the second part of your question, my team and I decided to approach the challenge by taking everything step by step. So, it's not as if you can go from taking your data sets, plugging them into a neural network and calling it a day. It's not like that. There's a whole process to it. So every week we learned a new step in the process and applied it to our own model. So one week we are removing sensitive and ethical information from our data sets. The next we're using logistic regression. to detect fraud and the next neural networks. So I would say taking the challenge in this way proved to be the best way for us, as this process wasn't the simplest thing in the world. I mean, it wouldn't be much of a challenge if it was. So
Right.
breaking down everything step by step really simplified everything and made it possible for us to complete and create our final model.
Yeah, I love that, Carl. Yeah, sometimes there's this perception that, you just throw an AI at it and it's all done. And that certainly is not the case in real life, right? When you have to build things at work. And yeah, it's great that you had that experience, hands-on, that you can't just, throw an AI and say done, because there's just a lot of human experience in there. Skylar, what about your team? What was your team name, and what was a little bit of your philosophy for the team?
So our team picked the name AI and the Chipmunks. We kind of just thought it was cute because there's three of us girls on the team, so it kind of fit, and we thought it related to the challenge. And for the second part of the question, we kind of similar to Carl, what he had to say, we decided to take the challenge 1 week at a time to not be overwhelmed with the amount of information we were getting at the beginning. We really took it week by week to understand new content that we were learning. And for my whole team's perspective, we were all new to using Python, especially with this large of a data set. So we took a lot of time understanding how it would be used in relation to the data.
Got it. Excellent. Well, I love the team names, and I love the fact that each of the teams generally have a very different approach, right? Which actually shows that when we build solutions, right, each of the teams can put their own individual personalities and backgrounds and perspectives into the development of these solutions, and it just shows the variability there and variety. And that's one of the things we're trying to do, right? Is get that sort of diversity of thought and creativity into everything that we do. So let me dive a little bit deeper, Skylar. One of the things I was a little concerned about is, transaction data is not an obvious, thing to work with, right? So you have to make a decision about my next transaction based on, let's say, observing 38 transactions in the past. So you have to somehow summarize all those transactions, come up with variables, and then be able to make a prediction, fraud or not fraud, related to the current transaction. And it might sound easy the way I said it, but it's not easy in terms of the mathematics. So I was just curious, compared to other sort of data science problems you worked on, what was challenging about this from a size of data, or maybe that concept of profiling or summarizing transaction data associated with individuals? Was that a challenge for you and the team, and how did you approach it?
At the beginning, our initial impressions, I feel like most of my team, including me, we were kind of overwhelmed at the beginning with the data, not being used to transactional data and doing what we needed to do for the challenge. And most of us had only ever worked with data sets on Excel. So it was a whole different experience using Python because we weren't visually seeing the data every time we would work with it, which I kind of liked at the end because I felt like I was able to get a better grasp on the concepts I was needing, like the insights on the data. I didn't focus too much on one or two or three particular transactions. So I was really able to get an overall feel for the insights of the data and what was happening.
Excellent. Yeah. And frankly, right, it's really interesting. When I first got into this field, I got into it after, getting a postdoc and working at Los Alamos National Laboratory. And even for me, it's a change of the way you think about the science, but also, these models have to make decisions in milliseconds, right? So you have to be very efficient in the way you construct variables and which variables you use within the model. So there's a lot there because it's about operationalizing the AI also. So Carl, a question for you, right? Dr. Wentzien mentioned it, and was around the mentors, right? And some teams leverage the mentors quite a bit. Some teams leverage the mentors less. I was just curious, what was it like to work with my staff, right? And and they would hopefully they advised and guided and were part of your team, but can you give a little view into what it was like to work with, industry professionals in data science, on a real project and work through the challenge?
So first off, I just want to say that our mentors were just amazing. They were always a great help and always there to give us feedback and insights every step of the way. Our mentors really helped us with our shape our experience, since whenever we inevitably got stuck or stumped on something, they were always there to help fix our issues and explain where we are, how exactly everything works, and what we need to know regarding our specific issues. And also, our mentors helped us shape our thought process as well, by helping us think about the problem in different ways. So, for example, when we're creating our features, they told us to think of fraud, of ways fraud occurs, and to compare fraud to non-fraud transactions. They also told us to, instead of using a threshold of 100, maybe we could try possibly 300 instead. So these small insights really helped us, helped our team in the process, and I couldn't be more thankful for our mentors being there.
Well, that's great, Carl. I'm glad to hear it. And they're big fans, and they're there for you and the rest of the students even after this challenge. They enjoyed it quite a bit, and frankly, that's the way we work here at FICO, right? Like we when we build models, we have to work with each other and get insights, and we're always in a situation where we can be a little bit blind to a different perspective, or we didn't think about, let's say, a different threshold, or we didn't think about the way a fraudster would commit fraud in the same way as maybe my colleague one cube or one office over. And so like that collaboration is really, really important. So I'm glad that came through. One of the reasons that we do these challenges is that we want to, help train the next sort of generation of data scientists, and we want to drive more diversity of thought and perspective in these projects. And it's really important that we do so that we make sure that AI innovation continues to reflect responsible AI and ethical sort of considerations. And some of that came through, I'm sure, in the challenge that you participated in. I was just curious, maybe to wrap it up with both of you before we bring Dr. Wentzien back, was, as you reflect on the challenge and kind of the experience, what do you take away in terms of maybe the way maybe your paths might change, potentially, and whether you'd recommend this to other students that are in different stages of maybe their careers in data science and their learnings in data science. So, is this something that might maybe change your trajectory a little bit, or something that might, give you a different way of looking at how you want to pursue your career? Skylar, could you start us off?
So I think that this challenge really helped me gain more skills, and I will be using this in my future career to help me make better data-driven decisions. And I really want to be able to tell stories with data from the insights that I gain to make better decisions in the decision-making process. And I highly recommend this to anyone who wants to do the challenge or do a similar challenge. I really thought it helped me supplement my learning, what I was learning in my other data classes throughout the semester. And I really thought I learned a lot in a little bit of time. I really felt it was beneficial for me to be a part of this challenge.
Excellent. Thank you. And Carl, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would absolutely recommend other colleges and students to participate in this program. This program gives you a real life problem and gives you the skills and the know-how to solve that problem. So even if you're not a data analytics major, if you're interested in data analytics, this challenge will give you a good look at what data analysts do and will give you that experience. And for me personally, I plan to incorporate the skills we learned throughout my career, since I'm interested in a career in data analytics. And like I said before, this challenge gives a real world experience, and it'll give me somewhat of a head start into my career. And so even if it's not fraud detection, many skills that we learn, such as comparing data sets, can be transferred to other data analyst roles.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Thank you both. And yeah, I mean, like, we're not going to get, the future will be about AI and data science and working with data. And so no matter what paths we all take, right, it'll be part of what we do. And the more comfort you have and the more exposure you have, it can only benefit. So I'm glad to hear that. And hopefully those that listen in that are considering participating in a challenge like this will do so in the future. So with that, let's bring back Dr. Wentzien. We can just wrap up. So Dr. Wentzien and Carl and Skylar. Again, I want to just thank you all for participating in the challenge. We get so much from FICO from the interaction, both mentors and myself and the team leader Tanya with respect to working through these programs. And this is year 2. We will have year 3. And I heard earlier, Dr. Wentzien, you're already up for that. So I will be working on what year 3 theme is, but I couldn't be more proud of all the students and the level of participation and thoughtfulness. You have awesome students, really engaged and very thoughtful, sort of focus on how to form those teams. And it's just a great showing for Delaware State University, but just a really rewarding experience for FICO and it sounds like for the students also. So thank you very much for that. All right, thank you.
We just want to thank you again for considering Delaware State University. This is a great opportunity for the students, and thank you to everybody that from FICO that presented this great opportunity to the students.
Our pleasure. All right, thanks once again.